and what made you decide to run for city council here in Spokane?
Yeah, well, I'm a teacher born and raised here in the district, graduated from North Central High School, just like my grandpa, and now teach at NC. And I see a lot of the challenges in our community, especially around affordable housing, homelessness, job, economic opportunity, and infrastructure to support our economy. And so I decided to run for the seat because I got the skills and experiences to fight for working and middle-class families. I went to Princeton on a Fulbright Scholarship after working at McDonald's, and got those skills to come back to serve our community. And I want to work hard on advocating for middle and working class families to make sure that everybody in our area has a fair shot.
All right, and I guess if you had to describe your platform or say what issues were you think are the biggest issues facing city council, what would they be?
Yeah, the top issues facing the city is affordable housing, real action on homelessness, infrastructure to support 21st century jobs, and prioritizing public health and safety, especially when it comes to mental health. Yeah, I was just saying, I think when it comes to my priorities, we have to tackle all of our major challenges at the same time. That's affordable housing, homelessness, prioritizing mental health or public health and safety. We need to get support and improve our public safety system. We need to get more police officers hired and folks trained with mental health. That way that the police can get back to fighting crime. Affordable housing, we need action. People are struggling. It's impacting middle and working families the most with rising costs. That's seniors on fixed incomes, new families. We need to make changes to our zoning, to our development, to incentivize it and build more immediately, but also having protections for renters and other people too. And the last one is infrastructure and growing our local economy. We need apprenticeship programs to develop our workforce. We need to support manufacturing jobs and growing those good paying jobs in our economy, and the infrastructure to support our local businesses.
All right, and you kind of touched on a lot there, so I'm going to try to break it down. I guess what are some tangible things policy-wise or ordinance-wise that you would try to do if you do win office to address those issues that you said are important to your campaign and to your platform?
Yeah, for example, for housing, I have a background in urban planning. I studied that in my master's program, and I've worked on these issues in our community. So I'm the only candidate that has put forward ideas on these issues to make better our housing better for our community. So first, we can increase accessory dwelling units, that's cottages, mother-in-law suites, make it easier to build those. That creates more options for people in the missing middle market, those beginner homes. We need to increase density where we have the infrastructure to support it. That's infilling in downtown, along our centers and corridors, along transit lines where people can get to and from work. And third is that we can look at permitting process and making sure that we fast track those programs that have more affordable housing. And we can look at how we're using the multifamily tax exemption to make sure it's spurring development for affordability projects.
All right, when it comes to housing specifically, does that also mean, are you focusing more on more single family residents like houses or more like apartment complexes, or is it really a mixture? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think right now in Spokane, we need to see a mixture of housing options for people. We need more single family housing, but we also need more multifamily housing, more duplexes and triplexes, and more apartment complexes too. The important thing there is to make sure that it's done where we have the infrastructure to support it. That's not in every neighborhood. It's along the areas that we have bus lines and the infrastructure to support it. I'm running to represent, again, middle and working class families. They've endorsed me because they know I have housing policies that are going to support them. That's firefighters, teachers, healthcare workers, essential workers like custodians, and grocery workers. Unfortunately, my opponent has been receiving a record amount of money from realtors and developers in this race. It's the most outside money that's been spent in a city council race, and he's running to prioritize their priorities to make a profit.
All right, and let's talk about homelessness. What are your, I guess, tangible ideas to combat that issue?
I'm the only candidate in this race who has an idea of what we could do to tackle homelessness. I put forward a 4-point plan on what we could do to address homelessness and take real action. I've studied the issue. I've gone to shelters across the country, talked to the experts in our area, and have the ideas that we need to address and get real action on homelessness. The first thing we need to do is keep people in their homes and from becoming homeless in the first place. Second, we need to get them off the streets with a coordinated outreach system. Third, we need a strong shelter system. that gets them mental health and substance abuse resources so that they can stabilize. Fourth, we need to make sure that they're transitioning out of homelessness. That's job training programs and affordable housing options that gets them back on their feet.
All right, and then let's move on to your final two, which were public safety and infrastructure. How do you plan on tangibly tackling those issues if you were to win office?
Yeah, for public safety, I think it's about using common sense changes to improve our public safety system. I support our police officers to do what they do best. That's to enforce laws, deter crime, and respond to emergencies. They're not mental health counselors, nor should they be expected to. But police have been asking for help on mental health resources. And we need to be supporting programs like the Mental Health Stabilization Center that gets people the resources they need so they're not cycling in and out of jail. I've worked and continue to work in public health around mental health and expanding those opportunities in our community. I know the challenges around that and want to work on making it stronger. We also have issues right now around 10% vacancies in our police force. I hear it on the doors. I've knocked on thousands of doors, and people are concerned about some property crime in their community. I believe this is a lack of leadership from the administration of not putting forward proposals. We have a hiring crisis throughout the city, and we're losing millions of dollars on housing, vacant police officers. So we need leadership and prioritization. And my job as a council member is to be advocating for what I hear in the community and fighting for those needs in City Hall. And that's putting pressure to get our city back to hiring and recruiting and retaining police officers.
All right, and then what about when it comes to infrastructure? How do you plan on addressing that issue?
Yeah, when it comes to infrastructure, I think we need to look at the 21st century infrastructure. We need to have good streets and parks, clean air and clean water. But we also need to look at how do we grow the economy for working and middle class people. We need to expand broadband internet. We have a virtual economy, and we can be recruiting and growing our workers here in that virtual economy and having a system where people can be working and supporting our local economy with those jobs. We can grow tech jobs and tech coding. We need to look at apprenticeships. I talked and have been endorsed by a lot of labor unions in the trades, like the laborers and the iron workers and the electrical workers. And they all tell me we're going to be seeing a silver tsunami of a lot of people retiring. And so we need to be training a workforce to take those good paying jobs. And that's looking at partnerships with the school district. I'm a teacher, and how we can emphasize those partnerships and get people into those workforce jobs. The last part is making sure we have infrastructure to support small businesses and making our community walkable and safe and livable, where people can walk down to the store, to the restaurant and shop and feel safe while they're doing that.
All right, and you kind of touched on two topics I want to bring up. So the first one is businesses. Spokane area is growing. They're both attracting, small businesses, but also the big headliners like Amazon. But though we've seen a lot of growth out in the West Plains and Spokane Valley, those outlying areas, how would you plan on bringing those businesses into the city of Spokane itself?
Yeah, I think we need a regional plan for the growth of our region. We're seeing this unprecedented growth, and we need to look at how can we do and support these types of manufacturing jobs. We've got great industries around healthcare and education in Spokane. And so we should be looking at how can we produce these supplies and manufacturing jobs and machines right here in Spokane, from the bottom all the way up through production. And so we've got space downtown, we got space throughout the city about where we can incentivize and bring those jobs and get connected to our industries. And I think about that is about how do we cluster and bring those industries together to promote that growth and trade. And that's recruiting good paying jobs for working and middle class families.
All right, and then another thing, we're still in the pandemic. We've been in a pandemic for over a year now, and we have sadly seen some businesses close their doors due to, either the pandemic or other reasons. How do you plan on supporting already existing businesses here in Spokane to keep them open and keep them having those jobs available to people?
Yeah, unfortunately, the pandemic has upended our way of life, and we need to be recovering and have a strong recovery through that. I'm a public health worker and work at a nonprofit. And the first thing that we need to remember is that in order to make sure that businesses are thriving, people have to feel safe and comfortable to be able to go to those businesses again. Even when we get rid of mandates, mask mandates, we're not seeing people returning to shopping and eating and going to events at the same rates. And that's because there's still a lot of fear. So we need to make sure that we're prioritizing our public health and safety, putting those measures in place to grow that. But we also need to make sure that we ease the restrictions for small businesses so that they're able to think creatively and grow. One of those could be allowing businesses more accessibility into outdoor dining, sidewalk space, looking at utility rates, looking at grants and tax exemptions for first-time businesses, so that when we want to grow and get more businesses in our core, we can give them a tax exemption for the first couple of years as a little break to grow that economy. And so there's lots of policy proposals to put forward on that.
All right, and then the other thing was you have received some of your biggest donors are labor unions. I guess how much of an influence have they had on it? I don't want to say your platform, but how you plan on going about being a council member if you do win office? How big of an influence have they been?
Yeah, families, and I'm extremely proud to have gone out and got their endorsements. In my race, the maximum contribution is $1,000 in the general. There have been no large sums of outside money. I'm supported by a large array of people, the most individual donors, over 450 individual donors and labor unions. So when I'm running and prioritizing working in middle-class families. Like I mentioned, those are healthcare workers, essential workers, custodians, grocery workers, people who have been working hard and struggling to get ahead in this economy. Like I mentioned, I'm deeply concerned about the outside influence. The maximum or the largest contributor in this race for city council, who's spent more money than either of our campaigns, is the National Realtors Association and the developers. We're spending a record amount spreading negative ads and mistruths in our community. And I expect voters to be able to see through that and trust, they know that I'm going to work hard for them and prioritize them, not big businesses who are outside our community. Spokane prides itself on being a city that feels like a small town. And we want to make sure that our city continues to feel like a small town and not being influenced by these outside influences.
All right, and then if let's say if I was an undecided voter in your district and you had 20 to 30 seconds to try to get my vote, how would you go about pitching that to them?
Yeah, you should vote for me because I'm the candidate who understands our issues in our community, is deeply connected, and steps up to serve our community. During the pandemic, I stepped up and served over 100,000 meals to members in need. I've got the experience and skills to serve our community, and we'll work hard to do that. I've got plans and specific policies to start on day one, and I'm always accessible and ready to listen and show up in our community. I know every neighborhood in our community, unlike my opponent who has said that he's never been to certain neighborhoods. I'll work hard for you, and I ask for your vote.
All right, and then one big part, if you do win office, is not only working with your fellow council members, but working with the mayor, with Mayor Nadine Woodward. Do you have, I don't want to say any concerns, but how do you plan on working with her? Because you guys have some similar interest policy-wise when it comes to things like housing, homelessness, and public safety. So are you looking forward to working with her, or how do you plan on keeping that partnership going and working with her to achieve those goals?
I'm a teacher. I work with all kinds of different people that have different interests, motivations, and needs and desires. And I can take a class of 30 individual middle schoolers who are not always respectful and not motivated. But we are able to come together to find common interests and goals and identify what those are and work together as a community to improve it. And that's how I view my role as a city council member. This seat, this role is to represent and improve everybody in our community. And so that's working with and talking with all stakeholders. I go out and listen and actively listen to them. That would include the mayor's office, trying to identify those places that we can agree and improve the lives for working in middle-class families.
All right, and then last question really is what you've been knocking on a lot of doors, meeting with voters. What have they been telling you about what they want to see from city council for the future of Spokane?
Yep, I've talked to thousands and thousands of people, and the issues that they're concerned about are issues that we've heard for a long time. People are really concerned about affordable housing, making sure that their kids and their family members are able to continue to live in Spokane in the future. They're concerned about homelessness. It's a public safety issue and it's a human dignity issue, and they want action on it right now. They're concerned about their public safety and making sure that the police show up when they're called and they're supported. They're concerned about economic opportunity in our future. On top of that, I would say voters know and care about having a positive community where we all can work together to get along. They've been receiving negative ads, and they've been concerned that that's not who we are as Spokane, and that they believe in a future where better days are ahead.